Welcome, wonderful, warm, winning greetings to you this Sunday afternoon. How are you doing, my winning family? This is the Win Win Life talk show and podcast where we share your life, we share your win, we share your story. First time tuning in, second, third, fourth, please go ahead and hit the like button and the follow button if you are on Facebook tuning in. And if you're on YouTube, please go ahead and hit the subscribe. Remember to tap that bell so that each time we go live or upload a video, you are well informed. And please do also, if you receive any sort of value or is blessed in any way, go ahead and hit the like button. Today we have a wonderful guest of ours. We are blessed to sit and to talk with a sister in the Lord, veteran in her field in terms of the mind, and what she's going to be sharing on today is based on what she would have walked through. So she's not speaking of something that she heard somebody would have said, oh, this is what depression is about. But she's speaking from her experience, and nothing speaks more loudly than someone who has walked the path and who could tell you this is how it goes. Her name is none other than Victoria D. Walker. And just before we invite Victoria to come up, I'd like to share some background on Victoria. As a Christian author, certified thought coach, podcaster, entrepreneur, director, and educator at Choose to Think Academy, speaker and university instructor with nearly 30 years. That is what? Experience. With nearly 30 years of teaching and advising experience, Victoria's mission is to coach women how to live their best life, not only their best life, but their best thought life in the four main areas of life. What are those four main areas? 1, health. 2, wealth and purpose. 3, relationships. And 4, faith. Her signature method, the 7 R's to living your best thought life, helps the raveled mom, the struggling wife, the overworked nana, I like that, and the anxious single entrepreneur deal with toxic thoughts, something real, and thinking patterns in healthy, life transforming ways. Please help me welcome with us today, Victoria D. Walker. Welcome, Victoria. It's a pleasure to have you here on the Win Win Life.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I am delighted to be here.
Yes, and we're delighted to have you. Yeah, so we're just going to jump right in, Victoria. Based on what you would have walked through personally, our focus on our topic today is on depression, and not only being there, but coming out. What's on the other side? What you would have walked through. What is your definition of depression, and how was what led you into that period of time in your life?
Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be able to share my story. And I kind of get goosebumps because really this is a story about God and his good grace in my life. And I think what he did for me, he can do for you, the listener, the viewer, because back in 2016, I was otherwise had just kind of a quote normal life, just doing life with kids, raising 4 children. I was a single mom at the time. And so many things. There was like a little recipe for kind of disaster in my life. And I know that people can relate because you've probably had something tragic, catastrophic, something that really kind of pulled the rug right out from under your feet. Those kind of life occurrences, we all have them.
Yes.
And sometimes we just get through them with God's grace, but sometimes it's like one after another. And you're like, oh my goodness, this is way too much. And for someone like me, very high driven, I have learned such wonderful lessons about depending on God instead of my own strength. That's one of the actual benefits from my story and the experience that I'm going to share. But during that time, my children were all leaving. I had home educated my children for 19 years.
Wow.
Total, I did. At that time, it was a few, just not so many years at that time, but all 4 of them, and I was launching them on into their adult lives,
Yes.
college. They were leaving the home, they were getting married. And you've heard of like the empty nest syndrome. It's that transition between having your kids under your feet and then suddenly you look at them in a blink of an eye and they're adults. You've trained them, you've taught them, and now they get to go fly and spread their wings
Yes.
and make decisions on their own. And so that was bittersweet to me. It was a difficult transition in my life, especially because the fourth one, my baby, was then, I just had a few more years with him. I also have probably one of the most important underlying agonies of my soul is that I had a particular prayer that I had been praying for over a decade. And I knew, Michelle, that God was going to answer this prayer. I knew it. I would have bet all the money, everything that he would answer it. I reminded him often how he was going to answer it, but you can see how that's a little bit off, even in my thinking. It's as if I was telling God what to do. It's very sad for me to even confess that, but that's essentially what I was doing. Even though the prayer request that I had for the Lord was one that was godly and it was definitely within his will.
Yes.
Never, and he, providentially, he allows many things to happen.
He does.
Divinely, he didn't do what I was asking him to do, but
Yes.
that threw me into a bit of a tailspin, and I had
Mm.
such a crisis of faith. So I had this crisis of faith that was brewing, and that really broke my heart when he didn't answer that prayer. And I didn't, suddenly it's like I was mad at him, or I couldn't believe that
Ah,
he wouldn't do something that would have been such a good thing to do.
yes.
My children were leaving, as I said. I also lost a job that I loved. I was teaching at a local university. I could have walked right to the campus. I absolutely loved this job. I loved my colleagues, the students, the academic atmosphere. It was so much fun,
Mhm.
but they made some, I think they released maybe, I don't know the number, fewer than 20 full-time faculty members because they were downsizing and
Mm.
just budget cuts. And I teach Spanish, so foreign language on the college or the university campus is a little different nowadays because many students take foreign language in high school, they get dual credit and all of that. But at any rate, that was also equally devastating to me. So I had this
Mhm.
amazing little recipe of disaster just kind of going on in my life. And it basically, I think I just kind of quit, or my world became very, very dark. And
So it was kind of like it was brewing,
it was
the
brewing.
severe brewing.
And it
Wow.
was just one knockdown after another knockdown. Now, the kids leaving, I was expecting all of that, but suddenly I had been single for so long, and I'm like, oh my goodness. I didn't even have a little doggy at that time. There was nobody in my house. And so I'm like faced with the what, and so I've had to learn how to restructure what I say, because the words of my mouth are so powerful. God tells us that we
Yes.
have life and death in the power of our
Yes.
tongue.
Yes.
So I can now look back and I can see how I was not believing God. I was not trusting him. My words and my thoughts were actually driving my life. And
Hmm.
that's the type of depression that I entered. So finally, after about, I'm going to
Before
say,
you share
uh,
finally and go into what, can you share with us some of the words and the thoughts that was regurgitating during that period of life of time?
sure. Oh my goodness. And some of the words and just the phrases, my whole belief system was really messed up. I think I was telling myself over and again that I'm all alone, or you're going to be all alone. And I could go into, I'm not worthy of God's love. God doesn't love me, because if he loved me, he would have definitely answered this prayer.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
why did he allow me to lose my job? And I'm not, the whole, I'm not worthy. There were a lot of I statements,
Ah.
and like something that was focused on me, a lot of self focus in my
Yes.
thought life, a lot
Yes.
of self pity, a lot of over attention to myself, a
Yes.
lot of defeat. Um, actually, maybe I can come back to this question to answer in a little bit, but as I moved forward, I
Mhm.
challenged myself, Michelle, and I asked myself, what are the thoughts that you're thinking, Victoria? And I actually wrote them down. It took me days and days, and it's a practice that I still do to this day. But I was so,
It
I
took
began
you days to
it,
write down all
everything
the
that I was
thoughts that you
thinking.
were just going on and on
On,
and on.
yes,
Wow.
yes, it was like popcorn popping. That's the way I liken it. It's just one thought to this thought to this thought. And apparently scientists tell us that we have anywhere from 6,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day, which is
Mhm.
phenomenal. I can't even
Yes.
really get my
Yes.
mind around that.
Myself.
They also tell us that the lion's share, the majority of our thoughts are negative, and
Mm.
they're past memories.
Yes.
So you were fixated a little bit too much probably on
In
the
the
past,
past.
and that could
Yeah.
be our own past mistakes,
Yes.
things that were done to us. We
Yes.
just replay and replay and replay those,
Yes.
and we don't realize that we're doing that a lot. But when we do that, that influences our emotions and our feelings in the present time. And it
Yes.
also, from there, it influences our behavior. And so for me, after months and months and months of kind of going down this slippery slope, and I was not going up at all, I was just going further and further and further down into this, what I called through the door of darkness. It's like I went into this just a darkened place. I
Mm.
began losing weight. I kind of felt lifeless, like I call it flatline. It's just like
Yes.
nothing excited me really. I love my grandbabies, but sometimes, and I would love to spend time with them. And so I can remember one time in particular, I went to get my granddaughter and I kind of faked it. Do you ever just fake how
Yes.
you just, okay, I've got to rise to the occasion, be
Yes.
professional or whatever.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so
Yes.
with my granddaughter, I didn't want her to be concerned about me. And I was able to be like the very best and that
Yes.
I could be with her. She was probably 4 at the time, but as soon as I dropped her off at or my daughter's house, I just would break down. So it was
Mm.
this up and
Roller
down kind
coaster.
of season of my life.
Kind of a
I was
roller coaster.
Exactly. I was
Mhm.
functional. So I kept my job. I was able to get other jobs and so forth. And I could still do the laundry. I had a friend who always said, Victoria, when you don't know what else to do, just go do laundry. Somehow doing the laundry makes me feel better. It does to this day.
Wow.
But so I could function, but I
Yeah.
was I was like a shell of a person almost. And not to
Mm.
sound overly dramatic, but I sought medical attention. And that's what I would, of course,
Absolutely.
counsel anyone to do. Go because there could be other things at play.
Mm-hmm.
For me, there certainly was, in addition to the three scenarios I described a moment ago, I was also, I was postmenopausal at that point.
Ah,
And so I had the hormone, all the
yes, yes.
flux in and out of going through menopause.
So that was a part of the mix as
Yes.
well, just that you didn't know at the time.
Yes,
Wow.
physically, well, I had a lot of suspicion, but I never had like hot flashes. I called them
Yes,
sparks. I wasn't the typical, like what you read about menopause. But at any
yes,
rate, I sought medical attention, and my doctor, my physician, offered me two choices. He said, Victoria, you can try antidepressants or you can try hormonal replacement therapy. And I'm like, okay, I really need to think about this. So, and pray through this a little bit. And
absolutely.
I had a dear mentor, and she recommended, she said, Victoria, I challenge you to learn what it means to take your thoughts captive.
Wow.
And
Victoria, stop a moment there.
mhm,
She did what?
she challenged me. She said, Victoria, I
Amazing.
challenge
I love
you.
that.
I challenge you to learn, to discover what it really means. Because we know that the Bible tells us to
Yes,
take every thought captive. It doesn't say take
yes.
one thought, take 10% of your thoughts. It
Every.
says every single thought. And if we're looking at 6 to 60,000, that's a lot of captivity action going on in my
Yes,
brain.
yes.
But God says that. God also tells us he says to, in Romans 12:2, to be transformed through the
Mm,
renewing of your mind. So
absolutely.
I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Because, hey, yes, I need transformation. And I wonder if some of the viewers or the listeners would say, yeah, I kind of just feel meh. It's not, I don't know if I'm really, really depressed. I'm
Mm-hmm,
not, I was never suicidal.
mm-hmm,
I was lifeless, but I wasn't really, I didn't go through suicide ideation or anything like
mm-hmm,
that.
mm-hmm.
But
There are
there's
persons who
just,
do. There are
yes,
persons who do. Mm-hmm.
yes, but I just felt meh. Meh is such a good little expression or word, I think, to describe really how I felt.
Yeah.
It wasn't, there was, I lost joy and peace and hope.
Mm-hmm.
I had lost those things, which are mind boggling because as Christians, those are, quote, privileges that we have.
Yeah.
That's not to say that as Christians, we won't have hard times. Of
Yeah.
course we will. Even Jesus says that we will be, he knows he's leaving us with, there will be hard times and trials, and
Yeah.
but he gives us his peace. And so
Yeah.
I went on a quest, Michelle, to discover exactly what it meant to take my thoughts captive and to find lasting transformation through the renewal of my mind.
Mm.
And it has been an amazing journey for me, and I am so grateful. And that's the heart of my mission, is to share with other people that if, and it doesn't have to be to the extent that you're depressed. I still have
Yes.
to take my thoughts captive every single day, because there's an enemy there.
Yes.
And I do not want to partner with the enemy of my soul in my mind and with my thoughts. I do not want to come into under agreement with him.
Yes.
That's what you find if you walk through that black door, those stairs that lead down to no
Downward.
good end. So it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't even have to be a, quote, toxic thought. It could be a memory or something that sparks in your brain, but you think that thought and then another thought and then another thought, and like
Mm-hmm.
dominoes, before you know
Mm-hmm.
it, you're like, oh, I must be a horrible mom.
Mm.
And so our thoughts actually take up mental real estate. That's a Dr. Caroline Leaf quote.
Mm.
We think all our thoughts are just things that are floating around. They're
Yeah.
not. They're actually proteins in your brain.
Yes.
We can see thoughts, and imaging can show us thoughts.
Mm.
And it's like, finally,
Wow.
science is catching up to the
Yes.
Bible.
Yes.
Finally,
Yes.
gotten this is not surprising to God. God goes so far in his wonderful word to us
Mm.
to tell us what to think about. In Philippians
Mm-hmm.
4:8, he tells us
Mm-hmm.
exactly what to think
Yes.
about.
Yes.
So
Yes.
ask yourself, are you thinking these thoughts? Are you thinking about whatever is true and pure and honest and praiseworthy? Are you really thinking those thoughts? If not, maybe it's time to examine what you're thinking about also. So yes, back to your one question, I
Mhm.
did begin to write down my thoughts, and I was amazed. I was flabbergasted at the thoughts I had because they were completely contrary to who God says He is, who
Yes.
God says I am, and what God says about my scenario. They didn't line up. So
Mm.
who was saying those things to me? It wasn't my ego. It was the enemy of my soul. And I was in agreement with him, and I just went with it. And your thoughts will influence your emotions and your feelings, which
Mm.
in turn will influence your behavior. And
Yes.
that's exactly what happened in my life. So, but the great news is, because my thoughts got me into that state of being, my thoughts, it occurred to me, my thoughts can also get me out. And so
Ah,
that was the most, it was like an aha light bulb moment. I'm like, oh my
yes.
goodness, I can do something about what I'm thinking about. But I'll,
Yes.
I'll tell you, I worked
So that means you have power. The power is in your hands to do something about your
right.
situation.
I
Wow.
like to say I have responsibility,
Ah,
because I will say, and I'm happy to share the 7 R's for living your best thought life. If you want to it kind of
yeah.
encapsulates
Yes. Go ahead.
this process. But I'll tell you
Yes.
this also, Michelle, people generally don't want to process. They want the end result. The process is
The microwave. The microwave. Boop.
yes,
Minute. Yeah.
yes. We want the Sistine Chapel. We want that, but we don't want all the work that and the days and the
Mhm.
years that and the design and the hard work and the hammering and
Yes.
the drilling.
Yes.
We want this. So, but I still practice the 7 R's. Matter of fact, I call it the art or the discipline of taking thoughts captive. And
Mm.
so the first R, and there was a whole bunch of R's here just to make
Yes.
it a little
Go right ahead.
easier to
Please do share.
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, recognize what you're thinking about. That is the most powerful first step. You've got to think about what you're thinking about. Otherwise, you can't change your thinking if you don't know you're thinking it. So, and this can be something very simple. You grab a piece of paper and a pen, notebook, and you just spend 5 minutes a day writing down your thoughts. Create a thought. You've heard of like a prayer journal. You can have a
Yes.
thought journal and
Ah.
literally begin recording your thoughts. And then you can look at those thoughts and you can begin to group them, make little
Mhm.
categories, which is what I did. Is this about my identity? Is this about my scenario? Is this about the very character of my God and what I understand about him? So you can kind of characterize them and see where you're really getting stuck a whole lot. Maybe
Yes.
it's a lot of past memories that you're having, and you want to say, I'm done with those thoughts now. I don't want to keep repeating and ruminating and fixating my mind on those memories. I can't control them anyway. They're done. That's water under the bridge. So
Yes.
excuse me. So that's the first step, is just recognize what you're thinking about. The second one I've already alluded to, and that's rejecting or resisting any of those thoughts that does not come under alignment or in agreement with what God says, what
Yes.
his word says. And you got to know his word, right? So it might be an
Absolutely.
opportunity to start digging in his word to figure out, okay, what does he say about me? What does he say about my scenario? And what does he say about himself? So we've got to vet it and make sure it comes under obedience of Christ, all of those thoughts that we're having. And
Mhm.
then we want to learn to replace those thoughts. So when we have, that's the third R, is replace. When we
Yes.
have that otherwise toxic thought or a bad memory or a thought that leaves a little distaste in our mouth, we want to replace it very quickly with what God says about it. And we get a reframe that way. It may be we use a scripture verse, we use something like just do laundry. Even if we're feeling, we start changing our vocabulary. And for
Yes.
example, instead of overwhelmed, I don't use the word overwhelmed like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed, because that is one of those words that, by golly, my brain says, well, Victoria, if you're feeling and thinking you're overwhelmed, I'm going to prove you right. So I've
Mm.
got to watch my words. And instead of saying in that I'm overwhelmed, I say I'm in high demand. And
Ah,
suddenly I think,
I love it.
I'm in high demand. It's such a more flavorful, positive, energetic word. And
Yes.
with God's help, he tells me I can scale a wall. So if I'm in high demand, he's going to be right there with me, helping me through. Another one, I don't say that I have to go to work. I say it's my worship. My work is my worship. So I don't, I gotta, go to work. No,
I love
I've got to
it.
worship. And I
Yes.
don't, you know what I'm saying, Michelle, right? And so those are little kind of clever
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
a to-do list, it's a get-to-do
Get to.
list.
Yes.
Yes, you've heard that one. So it's just a way to reframe. So we want to replace those toxic thoughts that lead us in the wrong direction with thoughts that bring life and energy and peace and joy to our existence. And it's
Mhm.
not all for us. You think, well, why? It's not just so I can be happy and joyful and
Mhm.
peaceful. It's so that I can continue to do God's work and calling for me on this earth,
Yep.
so that I can serve others as
Yes.
Jesus came to serve, so that I
Yes.
can be a kingdom influencer. And I know that your viewers want to be that too. So it's not just so I can be happy and I can be joyful, though that happens. It's bigger than that. It's so
Yes.
I can shine the light of Christ. I'm still on a quest to determine what it means to have the mind of Christ. That still boggles me a little bit. But the Bible says you have the mind of Christ. So I'm like,
Yes.
okay, I got to figure
Yes.
that one out. So, and this kind of, step 4 is repeat. You repeat, 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 repeat this whole process of recognizing, rejecting, and replacing. You do it again and again and again until in
Yes.
your brain you formed literal new grooves, so
Yes.
that what used to haunt you, or those old negative feelings and thoughts and that you would be saying yourself, that like you're beating it, just it's a broken record there. You suddenly don't do that anymore after at least 63 days, and generally it's more like 3 months. And I even heard someone say recently it could be as long as a year of the repetition of what is a truth filled thought, a
Yes.
life-giving thought, a
Yes.
biblical thought or affirmation over your life, a God focused thought. It can take that long to really decimate all of those other toxic thought clusters that you may have had for so many years. And
Yes.
then finally, step 5 is to rejoice, because what you'll notice, if you don't give up, if you keep going, you're going to notice that your mind is renewed, and that's worth
Mm.
rejoicing. You have that renewal that you're after. And then the last 2 steps are probably the most important, and step 6 is you rely on God. Like we said a moment ago, you are responsible for
Yes.
choosing what to think about.
Yes.
And God says, take every thought captive.
Yes.
Um, that's a command.
Yes.
That's a, what is that?
Directive.
Yes, it's a directive.
Yep.
So it's like he's saying,
Yes.
do this.
Yep.
And he says, be transformed through the renewing of your mind. So be transformed. But there's this strange dichotomy there, this dynamic that goes on where, if I could just on my own choose to be more patient, well, okay, I'm going to do it. But we know that God's healing hand needs to enter into this. And that's the
Absolutely.
last R. That's relying on God to do the work. So it's like God is 100% responsible for your healing and for doing that restorative work in your mind. But
Mhm.
yet you are also 100% responsible for taking charge and doing what he says. So it's this little dance that you and God get to do together, but we have to rely on him. And then finally we rest, knowing that he will do all the heavy lifting in this entire process. And that precisely over several years is how, with God's help, I always say with God's help,
Mhm.
because I could not have done it without him and his
Dancing.
word. His word is life to me, and
Yes.
it's light to me.
Yes.
And I don't want to go anywhere without him in my life. I want to rely on him, and I want to also rest knowing that he is with me, and he will it's the yoke. I am yoked with Christ,
Yes.
and that yoke is easy and light. The yoke that I was wearing was not easy and light. It
Yes.
about drove me to the ground and
Yes.
made me so lifeless. I could not bear the freight of my life at that time
Mm.
and
Mm.
during that season. I could not bear it. But
Mm.
God never intended me to bear that.
That's
But by
true.
my own effort, I tried and I could not do it. And
Mhm.
so, by his good, loving mercy and grace, he stepped into my life in a new way and just set me on fire for loving him. My faith increased so many things. I've learned so many things
Yes.
about him and come to know him in a different way, much deeper relationship with him now.
Yeah. So the woman who was once meh is now on fire.
Right.
Like, God, give me this mountain. Let's go. There's a life to live. There's
Right.
women to impact, and there's lives to change. Yeah. Powerful, powerful story. Um, should we have our guests and they desire to reach out to you, in what ways that they could reach out to you? And Lady Victoria have a podcast herself. Can you share with them what's the name of
Yes.
your podcast?
Yes.
Yes,
It's
yes.
choose to think. Because we do have a choice. We got to choose to think, just as the
Used to
Bible
think.
says. Yeah, the Bible even says in Proverbs that as a man thinks within himself, so he
So
is. So
he
we want to choose
is.
to think. I
Mm.
also have this devotional. I'm so
Yeah,
excited to promote. It's the Choose to Think devotional. It's a
yeah,
365-day devotional, and you can go to my website, which is choose2think.co. It's co. Or victoriadwalker.com. Either way, you'll get there. And then, of course, the book is on Amazon. So I have several freebies over there. I do free coaching sessions for women just to, if you like, I don't know what I'm thinking about, or I need a little bit of help with this sticky issue,
yes,
or how do I reframe, or how do I do this, reject and resist, how do I do all of that, then I'm happy
yes.
to help, free of charge, completely complimentary. And I also have an ultimate gratitude guide, which is 37 pages. It's just a free download.
Awesome.
And because gratitude and praising God was the mindset, the to me it's a golden mindset
Yes, it
that
is.
really started. I noticed the shift began to happen when I took my eyes off myself and started praising God
Wow.
and thanking him for so many things in my life.
Wow, wow, wow. As you said that, Victoria, as we really come to a close, what popped back in my mind in my earlier days as I was learning to drive, I remember one distinctive day as I was driving and the road narrowed where I was going. There was a big truck coming. And as I was driving, my eyes was on the big truck, like I'm going to hit it or it's going to hit me without even making intentionally to turn the vehicle in that way, it started going in the direction of the truck. My instructor had to hold the wheel and turn it back quickly.
Mm,
And he says, Miss Forbes, what you look at is what you're going to go towards. And so,
yes.
even as you shared that, when you started plunging yourself in gratitude because you had to look to him to say thank you, God, thank you. As you started looking towards him, what I saw is that you were going upwards to him, becoming closer
Yes,
with him, less away
exactly.
from yourself. That was so powerful. Victoria, we are so grateful that you were able to come and sit with us. Thank you for accepting the invite and you were able to come and sit and share with us today concerning a path in your life that you would have walked through and how you came out. How you came out. Guys, let me just retrack how Victoria came out. She took a challenge from her friend. I
Mm,
challenge you to sit down and think what it all that it meant to take the thought captive. She not only
mm,
had one, she had many, as we know. And the wealth of information that she shared in terms of how she got out, what she did, where she's at now can impact and influence and transform your life. Be sure to reach out
amen.
to Victoria and share the word concerning her, the message, and her ministry. God bless you, everyone. Thank you for joining in. Remember that you are a winner. The word of God declare thanks be to God
God.
who always causes us to triumph. God bless you.
Yes.
Have a wonderful rest of the Sunday afternoon. Remember to follow, share, like, and subscribe. God bless you. See you next week, same time, same place.